This is the international symbol of the male gender. How do I learn? I learn by asking questions. We cannot find large number of questions written anywhere. We have to write our questions. We have to think. If we put the right questions, that means we understand the subject. This is the best way of learning. Books are full of answers, but the questions are not written. Therefore, when I read a page in a book, I need to write down the questions that the page has its answers. We should always go back to the basics so that we can ask questions and go into more details through the questions. What is the primary sex organ in the male? It is the testis. Testis, T-E-S-T-E-S, is the plural. A singular one is T-E-S-T-I-S. The testis as a primary sex organ is going to produce the gametes, the male gametes, and also it is going to produce the hormones for the male. Plus, we have ducts system. So, the male genital system is like the female genital system, is made of primary sex organ, ducts system, and we have glands. This is the general plan of the male genital system. To start with, we start with the testis, which is the primary sex organ. In case of the male, it is in the scrotum, which is a sac of skin in the lower abdomen between the thighs, because the testis needs lower temperature to produce gametes. Then we have the epididymis, a long tube carrying sperms to their destination. Then we have the vas deferens. Vas deferens starts at the tail of the epididymis and travels through the spermatic cord, through the inguinal canal, and then gets into the pelvic cavity. At the end of the vas deferens, this duct is going to dilate and forms an ampulla. At the posterior part of the urinary bladder, where the vas is going to reach, we have a gland, a lobulated gland, which is going to add secretions to the solution present in the ampulla containing the sperms, and these two glands are called seminal vesicles. They are posterior to the urinary bladder. Then the ampulla is going to send the duct to join the duct of seminal vesicles, and these two join together and form what is called the ejaculatory duct, which is going to pass through the prostate gland to join the urethra. This is a unique case because in the female, the genital system does not join the urethra. Then the urethra, as it passes from the bladder through the prostate gland, it is going to pass through the penis. Penis is made of 3 cylinders, 2 corpus cavernosum, 2 cylinders filled with blood vessels and sinuses, and a lower median part called corpus spongiosum. This corpus spongiosum does not contain blood spaces. It contains soft tissues, and therefore it gets the name spongiosum, and it contains the urethra. Corpus spongiosum ends up as the gland's penis. There is another gland which is going to add secretions into the urethra, and this is called bulbourethral gland. So this is the general plan of the male genital system. If we ask ourselves what are the broad ideas of this system, it is half of it is present outside the body cavity, and the other part is inside the pelvic cavity, and it joins the urinary system at the urethra. So the urethra is a common passage for sperms and urine. Here is another figure to put things in context. To start with the scrotum, which is a sac of skin in the lower abdomen between the 2 thighs. It is made of skin and a muscle called dartus muscle, and it is divided into 2 halves by a septum, so each testis is present in its own space. Then we have the testes. Testes may also be called testicle, and what comes out of the testis is a long duct coiled on itself called the epididymis. The epididymis is going to end up connected to a single duct called vas deferens. This vas deferens is going to go up the spermatic cord along with arteries and veins, and it is going to enter the inguinal canal, and the internal opening of the inguinal canal is getting into the pelvic cavity, and it goes posterior to the urinary bladder, and it is going to dilate to form an ampulla, and then seminal vesicles as a gland. One is on the right and one is on the left. These glands, they are going to add secretions to the group of sperms present in the ampulla, and then when these 2 ducts join together, they form the ejaculatory duct, which is going to pass through the prostate gland and joins the urethra. The urethra in the male has 3 parts. The first part is inside the prostate gland, and it is called the prostatic urethra, something we will learn in a later slide. Then there is another small gland inferior to the prostate gland, and it is called bulbourethral gland, and the other name is Cooper's gland. This slide is showing that the normal position of testis is at the very bottom of the scrotum. Was the testis created here? The answer is no. Where was the testis created? It was created in the posterior abdominal wall, higher up near the kidneys. This is something we will address later in embryology. Now it came down, it descends, and once the baby boy is born, the testis must be at the bottom of the scrotum. If it is not, then it has to be brought to this final place, otherwise there will be problems because the testis needs lower temperature than the core temperature. What is the core temperature? The core temperature is the temperature inside the body cavity. What do I learn from this diagram? I can see the testis, and I can see the epididymis, the very long coiled tube, and what I'm interested now in is this, what is called Tunica Vaginalis. What is Tunica Vaginalis? We have just learned that the testis was created at the back of the posterior abdominal wall, and it has a cover of peritoneum. As it comes down, it brings this cover of peritoneum with it, and when it settles down in the bottom of the scrotum, it has a cover of peritoneum. This is called Tunica Vaginalis. After we have learned some information about the testis, we should stop and think about this information. The testis is the primary sex organ. It produces gametes and hormones, and then the part of the testis which is going to produce the gametes are inside the testis, and then it is connected to a group of ducts, and there are several glands adding secretions to the contents of these ducts, plus the very important fact that the genital system in the male is going to join the urethra. What is this green colored structure? It is the tunica vaginalis. What is tunica vaginalis? It is the peritoneum brought down by the testis when it descends into the scrotum. Tunica vaginalis, as it comes down with the testis. It has a parietal layer around the testis. In addition to the parietal layer, it has a visceral layer, and there's a space between the parietal Tunica Vaginalis and the visceral layer of Tunica Vaginalis. In some cases, fluid collects here and creates a problem. In addition to the Tunica Vaginalis, the testis has its own capsule, and it is called Tunica albuginea. Albuginea means white. This is a thick, fibrous tissue covering the testis and making the skeleton of the testis. Tunica albuginea is going to send septa, partitions that will go into the cavity of the testis. These septa, they do not meet, and therefore they create incomplete lobules of the testis. What do these lobules contain? They contain seminiferous tubules that will produce the sperms. If we look at this diagram, and it is going to tell us what is the shape of the seminiferous tubules. First of all, it is loop structure. That means it has the shape of a circle, and this circle is connected to a straight tubule. How many seminiferous tubules are present in each lobule? There are several seminiferous tubules present in each lobule. This is a histological cross-section of the testis where we can see several circles. Each circle is a part of a seminiferous tubule, and each circle contains many dark blue nuclei, indicating that this tubule is populated by different types of cells, because I can see different types of nuclei. You may have learned in your histology that the shape of a nucleus indicates the shape of the cell. Then in the center of each circle or cross-section of a seminiferous tubule, you can see a lumen. This lumen is going to receive the very early developed sperms. Here is a histological section of higher power of a seminiferous tubules, where you can see that there are cells between the tubules. These cells are called interstitial cells or Leydig cells. These cells are concerned with the production of the male hormone, the testosterone. So the testosterone is not produced by cells inside seminiferous tubules. They are produced by cells between the seminiferous tubules. And if we look into the cross-section of this seminiferous tubule, you can see that the cells near the periphery are the very primitive developing gametes, which are called spermatogonia. Story of development of these spermatogonia will be discussed when we introduce the subject of embryology to you. Then we have different shapes of nuclei. If you look at the tip of the second arrow, you can see that there is a large pale nucleus. This is a nucleus of a large cell that is going to serve and nurse the developing male gametes. These cells are called Sertoli cells. We will learn more about them in the very near future. If you go towards the lumen, you can see that the nuclei are much smaller and they are more dense. These are the heads of the very early developing sperms. Everyone needs to stop and think about what he has learned in the last few slides. Closer look at cells of the seminiferous tubules. You can see that at the periphery we have the spermatogonia, the very early ancestors of sperms, and then these cells will develop and form what is called primary spermatocytes. And here is a large nucleus, pale cytoplasm. This is a nucleus of Sertoli cells. Then we have a group of dark stained, rather elongated, small nuclei. These are nuclei, the heads of sperms at their very early stage of development. Here we can see a group of cells between tubules. These are the Leydig cells or interstitial cells producing testosterone. Where are the seminiferous tubules? Seminiferous tubules are present between the septa of the testis in the lobules, and each lobule has several seminiferous tubules. Now, the seminiferous tubules have straight parts coming out of the loop, and these are called straight seminiferous tubules. What is next? Look at the green marked structures. The straight tubules are going to join a network, a mesh of tubules. These are called reti testis. What is the next passage connected to the reti testis? The next group of ducts are straight collection coming out of the reti testis, and they are called efferent ductules. Efferent, starting with an E, means that they are leaving or coming out of the testis. Now we have finished the ducts that are inside the tunica albuginea of testis. These straight tubules, they are going to join together to meet a very long tortuous single duct, which is going to form what is called the Epithelium. This is going to be outside the tunica albuginea or outside the testis, but it is attached to it. The epididymis has three parts. The top part is called the head of the epididymis. The middle part is called the body of the epididymis. The inferior and the last part is the tail of the epididymis. In this area there is very much less coiling, and it is going to continue as a structure called the vas deferens. The vas deferens is a continuation of the tail of the epididymis, and is a single duct, and it is going to go up the spermatic cord to enter the inguinal canal, and we will follow its steps in the next few slides. This is the vas deferens. Some reference they call it ductus deferens. Stop and review what you have learned. If you think you are missing something, go and read more from books or any site of the internet. The vas, as it enters the internal opening of the inguinal canal, it enters the pelvic cavity on the sides of the urinary bladder, and it has a special relation with the ureter. It is between the ureter and the urinary bladder. As it goes down towards the midline, it dilates, indicated by the red arrow. This is called the ampulla, and the ampulla is going to send a duct joining the duct of the seminal vesicles to form the ejaculatory duct, which passes through the prostate gland to open into the prostatic urethra. It's about time that you read this image, and it is labeled, and you need to stop and think about it and review your information. Here is the story again. The vas deferens, or the ductus deferens, is going to dilate and forms an ampulla, and it will receive the duct of seminal vesicles to form the ejaculatory duct to pass through the prostate gland to join the urethra. Just for a change, here is a freshly dissected cadaver where you can see that the orange marked structure is the prostate gland, and the part of the urethra coming from the urinary bladder is passing through the prostate gland, and this is called the prostatic urethra, where the ejaculatory ducts open. In the male, the ureter is much longer than that of the female. The female is around 4 centimeters long, while in the male it is around 16 to 20 centimeters long. And the external genital organ of the male, that is the penis, is made of 3 cylinders. The top 2, which are filled with blood sinuses, and each one is called corpus cavernosus, Once they are filled with the blood, the penis is going to be hard and increases in size. And below these two and in the midline, we have another cylinder which is not filled with blood spaces. This is called corpus spongiosus, and the urethra passes in the middle of the corpus spongiosus. Here is a mind map stating the very basics of the urethra. You have on your right the male urethra, and on the left you have the female urethra. You may see a red star showing that the female urethra is only about 4 centimeters long, and this fact is going to be important because of the female urethra is short. It is easy for infection to spread from outside to the inside of the urinary bladder. While in the male, the urethra has 3 parts. The prostatic part, which is inside the prostate. Then we have the membranous part, which is passing through the urogenital diaphragm, and we have the spongy part of the urethra present in the corpus spongiosum of the penis.